Good afternoon, everyone. It's Miss McCorkle. Welcome to theory video number 4. So today we're going to go back and review a little bit about the left hand bass clef notes that we did last time in theory video number 3. We did the middle C going down in the 5-finger position, which was C, B, A, G, and F. So we'll do a little quick review with those left-hand notes, the 5-finger position, and then today we're going to introduce other notes in the bass clef. And I'm also going to show you the workbooks and talk a little bit about what we're going to do to use those as well. Okay, so first of all, I've drawn on the board a staff. And I'm going to do my bass clef, so I'll count up to the 4th line. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I put my dot. And then I'll make a half of a heart. And I put a dot above the 4th line and a dot below the 4th line. And now I'm ready to work on bass clef notes. Now here's middle C. We've already studied the right hand C, D, E, F, G, and now we're going to review the left hand C, B, A, G, and F. Now we talked about that last week and we said if it's above the staff and it has a line through the center, that's your C. If you go down just a step away, and the note sits on top of the staff, then that's your B. C, B, top line, C, B, A. C, B, A, next note will be on the top space, which is space number 4. If we count up from the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's space 4, and that's the top space in the bass clef. That's going to be your G. And we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more note, C, B, A, G, F. And we said that when we started making the bass clef, we started on line 4, and that line 4 is an F. That's why this symbol can be called bass clef, or you can call it an F clef. It has 2 names. Now I would like for you to write this down in your notebook. Okay? So make sure that you're using on video 4, you're going to be using your notebooks, workbooks that I passed out. And there's some notebook paper inside. So this is where you're going to write down everything that I ask you to in the video goes in your workbook, okay? So that's where you'll write, this is video 4. This is the review, and you'll need to write down that the bass clef can also be called an F clef, okay? Now, if you want to go ahead and write down those 5 notes, start with your middle C above the staff with a line through it. Label that one C. Next, the note on top of the staff, letter B. The note on the top line, line has to go through the note, letter A. Top space, letter G. And the 4th line, 1, 2, 3, 4, same place you start the bass clef, is letter F. Okay? Now, after you get those written down in your workbook, Now I'm going to do a quick review. Okay. All right, so you're going to see 5 cards. The first one will look like this. Well, the one that I'm going to show you first in this order. That's your bass clef, middle C. That's your bass clef B on top of the staff. A is the top line. G sits in the top space, which is 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your G. And here is the note where we start our dot for the bass clef, and that is line 4. That's letter F. All right, let me mix them up. And now you're going to write this down in your workbook. So you can put down numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're going to write down the letters in this order. So you'll look at this note, decide what the answer is, and put it beside number 1. All right. Number 2. This is left hand 5-finger position. Okay. Put your letter in the blank beside number 2, the name of this note. Next, blank number 3, you're going to write the name of this note. Next, number 4. This is in the top space. Space 1, 2, 3, 4. What note sits in space number 4? Okay, and the last one. What note sits on top of the staff? This is number 5. Write your letter name in the blank beside number 5. And then we're back to where we started. Okay? Now, if you had difficulty doing it that fast, that just means you need to practice your notes more. So make sure you're reviewing those bass clef 5-finger position notes. Now, a little quick review on your right hand notes. Every Good Boy Does Fine and FACE. You're going to write these answers down in your workbook. This is your first card. You'll have 3 blanks. Remember now you're using Every Good Boy Does Fine and FACE if it's a space note. Okay, now if I move too quickly, then you just rewind your video and look at it again and finish writing your answers in. If you know your notes well enough, you should be able to get them down in the amount of time that I'm giving you. But it's okay to rewind it until you get comfortable naming them quickly. All right, now, number 2 is going to have 4 blanks. So put 4 blanks down. Remember, we're using in the treble clef, Every Good Boy Does Fine and FACE. So you ask yourself, is the first note a line note or a space note? Get your answer, put it in the blank. Next, is it a line note or a space note? If it's a space note, then use the word that rhymes with space, which is face, and count up. F-A-C-E. Next, line or space. Get your answer in the blank. And the last one, line or space. That's your 4th blank. Okay? those are the only two I'm going to give you today, so we can move on. All right. Now, I'm going to erase what we have reviewed from video 3, and then I'm going to introduce the bass clef, all of the notes in the bass clef now, not just the 5-finger position. Okay, so you will definitely want to write this down in your workbook. I would say make sure you don't write it huge, but just make sure you write a small one, big enough to put note names in on the staff. All right, so when we draw our bass clef, we're going to start at the bottom and draw line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and line 5. Now notice I made this staff longer, and that's because I'm going to write all the notes from the bottom line all the way to where middle C will come at the end. So let's go ahead and close that in with a bar line and a bar line at the end as well. And now we're going to draw our bass clef sign, or F clef. We count up 1, 2, 3, 4. We put our dot, our half of a heart, our dot above the 4th line, and a dot below the 4th line. Now we're in business. We're ready to draw in all of our notes in the bass clef. So I'm going to start the very bottom line. Has to have the line going through the circle. I'm going to do line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space on top of the staff, and then middle C with a line through it. Okay, so now we're going to learn how to label the notes that start way down at the bottom of the bass clef. These first 3 are actually below low C. So the G, the A, and the B are below the low C. And so this note is where we start with the keyboard that I drew in. Here's your middle C, and the next C down looks like this. So that 4th note that you drew in is a C. That is this C right here. Okay, so you go ahead and mark that one first. Now the note after C is D, then comes E, then F, G, A, B, C. So we have all of the notes in order just like our keyboard, but they're on the staff. So the low C looks like this. The next note is D, then E, F, G, A, B, and middle C. Okay, that only leaves 3 notes for us to learn, these last bottom notes of the bass clef. Now you know last week we studied C, B, A, G, F, starting at middle C. Well, if we start at low C and go backwards, it would be the same order, C, B, A, G. We just don't see the F here. C, B, A, and G. So it's very methodical. If you know that music alphabet, you're going to use it in the treble and the bass. As you can see, low G, low A, low B, and then we start on the low C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Now, I gave you a little sentence, every good boy does fine, and FACE, that helps you to name the notes in the treble clef. Now, I'm going to give you 2 sentences that will help you to identify the notes in the bass clef. So the first sentence goes like this. Let's see if I can write it right here in the middle. Great, big dogs fight animals. Now we take the first letter of each word, and if we start on the very bottom line of the bass clef, that's here, there's my G. I skip to the next line note, it's a B. I skip to the next line note, it's a D. Next line, F. And next line, A. Great big dogs fight animals. Now that's naming just the lines. Now we're going to go back and we're going to pick up the spaces that we left out when we skipped over those notes. We have space 1, space 2, space 3, and space 4. All right, before I tell you what to write for your spaces, write this down in your notebook. Make sure you've got the sentence for the bass clef lines. Great big dogs fight animals. And underline the first letter from each word so it will help you to remember that's your line note answer. G, skip over to B, skip over to D, F, and A. All of those circles have lines going through them. So that's why we call them line notes. Great big dogs fight animals. So make sure that's down in your notebook. Now let's go back and pick up those spaces. A for all. C for cows. E for eat. And that top space is letter G for grass. All cows eat grass. We take the A for the bottom space. There it is. Skip over to the next space note. There's your C. Skip over to the next space note. There's your E. And the last one we skip over to our G. Okay, so I want to introduce you to the bass clef today, making sure you see the difference in line notes that have the line going through them and space notes that sit in between the lines. Learn your sentence, great big dogs fight animals, for the lines. and then learn your sentence for all cows eat grass for your spaces. Okay, so let's just look at a couple of these. Let's look at the bass clef. Okay, we're starting right down here on the very bottom line of the bass clef. Now remember we said if we go straight up the alphabet, it will use both lines and spaces. So that would be a line, then we would go to the space. Line, space, line, space, line, space, line, space, and then we will be to middle C. All right, so let's go back and let's say our sentence this time. Okay, if we do the lines only, it's great, that's your G. Skip up to the next line, B, D, F, A. The sentence is, great big dogs fight animals. Line 1 is here. Line 2, line 3, line 4, line 5. Now when we go from line to line, don't forget we're leaving our spaces out. There's space 1, space 2, space 3, and space 4. Okay? But when we do them in order of the music alphabet, we use lines and spaces. So we climb the ladder. G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and middle C. Okay? So this is what our lesson video, theory video number 4 is all about: bass clef, lines and spaces. And I want you to work hard on learning those sentences and being able to recognize those notes. Get your flashcards out and also work on that app that I suggested. Name That Note has a button that you can click on for bass clef. After you've worked on your treble clef, you can switch it off to bass clef and start working now on naming these bass clef notes. Okay, so let me give you just a little bit of information about your workbook. Each week you're going to see over on the left side, this is a stack of theory papers. We're only doing 1 theory paper per week, okay? So when we do the video, I'll ask you to take out your first sheet for today, and it's called a review. We'll just slip it out, and we're going to talk about that in just a sec. All right, before I do that, let me go ahead and show you the rest of your workbook. You've got notebook paper to write your answers to the video, and then there's a tab here so that when you turn over, there's lots of music behind the tab. And different students have different music depending on what level you are. So you've got things to write from your video on your notebook paper. You've got a theory sheet each week, and then you've got pieces in the back that I will be assigning you. Okay, so make sure that when you come to your lesson, you bring your notebook each week, your workbook, this workbook that I just talked about, so that I can check your answers from your video. Okay, now I'm just going to quickly show you what you're responsible for doing. If you read your directions, you'll see that they want you to join this grand staff together with a bar line. So you'll have a treble at the top and a bass at the bottom, and it tells you to do that. Draw a treble clef, and at the bottom staff, you'll draw your bass clef. And then they give you an example of all the notes we talked about today. starting on the G, climbing straight up the ladder, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, and then we got middle C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, and it stops right there on this particular sheet. Now at the bottom, they're going to ask you to name the notes. Be sure you notice this top row is for right hand treble clef. So those answers will come from here. This bottom line is not for the right hand. It's a bass clef sign. So these notes are all notes that we covered today. And you can look up here for help if you need to do so. Okay, so this is going to be your first theory review to have completed by your lesson next time. So make sure you take it out, read all these directions, because they actually have your draw or repeat sign in at the end and a double bar and so forth. So make sure you've read your directions and you've answered your notes for the treble clef on the top row and your bass clef on the bottom row. And this is a picture of everything we covered today. Okay? Well, I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to seeing you at your lesson this week. Hope you have a great day. Enjoy this beautiful weather. This morning it felt so wonderful outside. It was about 55 degrees on my porch, and I thoroughly enjoyed the change of temperature. So hope you have a great week. Enjoy practicing, and make sure you do your work in your workbook and use your app, name that note, to work on both treble and bass clef notes now. Have a great day. See you soon. Bye-bye.